AP Computer Science A. This is Unit 5. This is going to be some notes for P5B. So this is like pre-P5B assignment, just to kind of help you understand what's going on. So our last project, we created these 3 different classes. We created a driver to run them all. We tried to store these in different arrays and array lists, but then we did try to store some different kinds in the same kind, and that was a problem. It wouldn't let you do that. So that's one motivation, is that there is a way that we could store these different kinds of objects in the same array, even though arrays are only supposed to hold one kind of object. Also, a big motivation here is that these classes shared a lot of stuff in common, and it would be cool to somehow take advantage of that, not have to repeat all these private instance variables and methods that they have identical to each other. So, I think that's probably the bigger motivation here. So there's something called inheritance or class hierarchy, and that's what this unit's about. So we're going to create something called a superclass. Okay, a superclass, and it's one of its motivations is to maximize code reuse. We want to reuse code. Okay, we don't want to have to redo it, and so let's call it my device. These are all devices, so I'm going to create a my device class, and it's going to be a public. So this is sort of like the header for the class public. I'm going to leave some space here because I'm going to write some stuff later. Public class, my device. So this is the header for the class. Okay. And what I want to do is I want to say that these classes belong under this class. So everything they have in common, I'm going to put inside here. So they all have a private instance variable double price. They all have a private instance variable int memory. They all have a private instance variable boolean is in stock. Okay. All right. So in what I'm going to do on today's assignment, this is what you're going to do. You're going to create this new class. You're going to take out the things that they all had in common that you put up here. Now they all still have their own unique private instance variables, right? Okay, but they also do share the ship item method completely, and they kind of share some parts of the toString. So we'll do that up here. We'll put all this stuff into a toString for this guy. Okay, so we'll do that, and so we'll actually get rid of the ship item class. Now we need to keep the toString because the toStrings on these have a little extra stuff that we could add on to that. And there's a way to do that. There's a way to use this and then kind of modify it. Now, these are called subclasses. And everything in Java is under a class, a different subclass. You get multiple levels of subclasses. Like for instance, even like under my computer, you could have another class called my laptop because it shares, in my desktop or something like that, and because they share things that are common to other computers, but maybe deserve their own specific subclass. Now, the way this is going to look when you put it in BlueJ, and this is also part of the UML diagram, is we draw arrows pointing towards the superclass, and then they have a solid filled in arrow because it's going to make difference. There's going to be ones that have open arrows and point other directions. So these are belonging to this superclass. These are subclasses of the superclass. Now, there's something that we have to add. There's a keyword here that's extends. My phone extends the superclass. To extend is to take something further. So it takes the my device and then it adds onto it. So each of these extend that class. And so in the header of the code, you actually have to, with the header public class myphone, inside your code, you have to say extends my device. You have to put that onto the header. So each of these now extends my device. So you're gonna have to go back and put that in there when you take this other stuff out. Okay, extends my device. Now there's a relationship here. This is called a relationship. And we've used this kind of sort of description before, but we used it as a has a relationship. That was class composition. A class has other classes in it. This is not that. This is this my phone is a my device, but more specific. Now, what we're going to do, I'm going to actually write some examples down here. Justification for having subclasses is one or more unique private instance variables. Okay, so if this class, the my phone and the my computer have all the same private instance variables, then why would we break them apart? You know, and or one or more unique public or private methods. Okay. And slash or one or more overridden, and I'll talk about what that means, overridden class methods. In other words, if they're identical, if everything in here is identical to everything in here, there's no reason to break them apart. Okay. But if they have unique things, anything kind of unique, then that might be a reason to break them apart and give them their own subclass. Now, the overridden thing, that means this toString, we're actually going to say what we're going to do is we're going to override it. Overriding. We're going to override this. Okay. Because we're going to take the toString up here and tweak it, add stuff, or totally rewrite it. That's called overriding. So it's called they inherit all the stuff from this. That's why they call it inheritance. The myphone inherits everything from the my device. It gets all the private instance variables, constructors, methods, and then it can add stuff to it. Now, how do we get that stuff from here into here? Well, one thing is you have to write extends my device. Okay. And I'm going to write the code right here. I'm going to squeeze it in here. I'm going to give you an example of what you need to type. Okay. Public class, my phone. And then we have to write extends my device. Okay. So we got to write that. We got to type that in. Extends my device. But there's some interesting things. Now, we are going to add the private instance variable, the unique one that was color. So we're going to put that in there. But we don't need to put anything for the other ones. Then in the constructor, public myphone, there's the 0hour constructor. Now, this is kind of an interesting thing. This is what we have to do. We have to call the super. Okay? So you say super empty parentheses, and what that does is that calls the constructor up here. This guy has to have its own constructor that constructs this stuff. And so what it does is it calls that, creates a my device, and this has to be the first line of code. And then anything else in here, like color, you'll set equal to null after that. Okay. So what this super with parentheses, is it uses the super classes constructor. Uses the super classes constructor, and it has to come first inside of this guy's constructor. Anything else you want to do after has to be done after this. You can't, essentially, it creates a My Device before it does anything else. When you create a My Phone, you have to create a My Device first, and then you can start adding stuff to it. But you can't start adding stuff to it afterwards. Okay, now the multiplier constructor, I'm going to squeeze it down here. Okay, public. Now, you still in this, you still have to bring in double price int memory. Boolean is in stock. And then string color. Okay. So you gotta put all these in here, even though it's like, well, I thought we're just doing color in here. Okay. But this is where it comes in. When you want to create a My Phone with 4 args, you call the supers constructor up here the one that takes the first 3 args. So you give these things price, memory, and is in stock. You give it to the supers constructor. And you got to do that first. After you do that, then the new things, color, you could say this dot color equals color. All right. You do something like that in the toStrings. In these toStrings here, what you do in the toString, I guess I'll write this over here. In the toString, well, you do public void toString. And then so in here, what you could do is, we could create a variable. Well, we could do this all in one line. We could say return, and we say, well, we want to use the toString from the superclass. So what you do is you say super dot toString. And so that'll call the toString of the superclass plus, not this toString. It'll say, oh, we're going to call that toString plus, we wanted to add, I think it was, slash t plus color dot dot plus this dot color. So when you go into those, you could leave this part of it, but then replace those first 3 lines with super dot toString. So this will call that toString up there. So this is called method overriding, partially overriding. Overriding would be like you totally gut it and create a whole new toString and replace that one, but they have the same exact name. If you just say dot toString anywhere inside the My Phone class, it's going to use the dot toString here. If you say super dot, that says, okay, let's go use something from the super class. Okay. So try that out tonight. You're going to go through and kind of call it name it a new object or a new project. Go into P5A, save as P5B, keep the original P5A the way it is because I still got to grade it. Start with P5B, start taking this stuff out that they have in common, create a new superclass, and then you have to edit the headers. You have to you got to change the constructors in here to use that constructor and then add a little bit on it. You got to change the toStrings in here. Now the ship item's totally gone here because they all do the same thing. So you could just put ship item up here totally. This toString does the 3 private instance variables that they have in common. And then down here, you're going to add some more to it. So you're going to do that. And in the driver, you can create an array shopping cart that now, so you're going to edit the driver. So now that the shopping cart just holds My Device objects and place one of each, my computer, my phone, and your device into it. And then you're going to go through and call those methods. Now, the interesting thing is when it now goes through in a for each loop and says dot ship or dot ship item or toString, it will know which one to use. It's like smart enough. It's called polymorphism, to find the appropriate method for the appropriate type of object that's inside of the array list. So we're going to go back through and tweak those things, and that's it. We're going to add more to this later.